That day I learned that I was serving the wrong warlord. Hervis Daubeny.
Hello you mighty fine people, and welcome back to the channel. It's been a while, and the channel is coming back with a fresh coat of paint. Everything is on the up and up, and it's time to start rededicating time back into this channel and the community. So welcome to the worst idea I've ever had. Can you beat For Honor's story mode without taking damage? Join me in this video as I answer the question that nobody asked. So let's set up some rules for this challenge so we can understand what constitutes a failure state. Put simply, receiving damage from any source will force me to either restart the mission or retry from the nearest checkpoint. Bear in mind that I don't have to get hit to take damage. Simply blocking a heavy attack will deal chip damage and then I'll be forced to try again. This does however free us up to use aggressive story feats in lieu of healing ones, which might be used on a more typical playthrough. For those who have not played story mode, it's worth keeping in mind that the heroes playable in this mode differ massively from their multiplayer counterparts. Game mechanics as a whole are that of a significantly earlier game build, so while the story mode isn't too difficult normally, there's a lot of, shall we say, eccentricities to early For Honor game design that will impede our progress. Lastly, I'll be playing the game on hard mode. This is because while I want to be challenged, I don't want to have to deal with the frustration that comes from realistic mode's lack of checkpoints. That and having no guard UI for this kind of challenge is painful just to think about, as you'll soon see. If you want to do the challenge yourself on realistic, then be my guest. You're a braver warrior than I. What I thought might be our first hurdle is me simply misremembering the tutorial. You're required to block this captain's attacks, which thankfully are light attacks, meaning that chip damage is not an issue. Unfortunately though, tutorials cannot be skipped, so if we fail early we may have to endure this rather tedious lesson more than once. After dispatching the captain, we get our first checkpoint and move on to fighting more captains. Things are going well until I get caught off guard by the quirks of Old For Honor. One of my attackers lands an overhead strike. Do you ever get that feeling when you're playing online and you say, "You know, I swear I dodged that"? Here I decide to experiment with parry timings, and learn the hard way that you have to parry much earlier than the animation would suggest. So I figure the same rules must apply to dodging too. So, after a hot minute of relearning jank For Honor, I resign myself to being slowly cut down so I can avoid having to do the tutorial again. You see, story mode doesn't have an option to restart from checkpoint. That option is only available to us if we die in the mission. On my next attempt, I completely forget to parry and take chip damage. I then try to play it safe and opt for evasion over blocking, but forget the lesson I had to teach myself regarding timings on the first attempt. We only just got our health bar, and the first fight is proving more trouble than I care to admit. One cup of coffee later, and I'm ready to balance aggression and patience to move on. I parry on the correct timings, defeat the Blackstone captains, and move down into the courtyard. Here, the game teaches you how to fight soldiers, lovingly redubbed minions by the community at large. If you never played For Honor in its early days, you'll notice that killing these soldiers have unique animations to them. Now while they look great, these animations come with a downside of locking us in place for the duration, so I decide to play it safe and engage them isolated where possible. The Blackstones aren't letting up, and now they have archers on the walls. Staying in the courtyard isn't an option, so we climb up and have to fight our first real adversary, an enemy warden. Well, that went about as well as I could have expected. Okay, round 2, buddy. Really? Counter zone? By far the worst part of this challenge is having to suffer the slow death at the hands of AI that take their time attacking when you want to be killed. Ubi, I know story isn't going to get any updates, but that restart from checkpoint feature will be real nice about now. This time I'm quicker and draw first blood. I keep my distance, and I choose my openings. Thankful of Old For Honor's absurd damage values, I fell the vanguard and move forwards. The captain is next. This time I'm ready to evade on proper timing. Slow and steady. By the time it comes to the soldiers, the dynamic is horribly twisted. Whereas normally I'd laugh in the face of such underwhelming fighters, here I feel genuinely outnumbered and try to stay composed until I can find my moment. With a sigh of relief, I move forwards and de-stress by channeling my inner Link by smashing some pots. Heading further up the castle, Dobney is there to reassure me.
That is how it is done, you see?
This next section of the level requires me to get past the Blackstones so I can get their archers off the wall. I decide it's in my best interest to hang back and let Dobney take charge here, since I can't see a scenario where I won't get hit by either a soldier or a stray arrow. After some hesitation and deliberation, I take a chance at running past the fight so I can trigger the next part of the mission, and thankfully I'm successful first try. With the archers defeated and the drop attack lesson out of the way, we're in the final stretch where we must defeat Blackstone soldiers that have breached the keep. Unfortunately, one of their wardens manages to tag me immediately, meaning that I'm going to have to retry. The warden goes down without any resistance on the next attempt, but I get caught by a captain suddenly turning his attention away from Dobney after I get too close to him while killing soldiers. I get hit by soldiers twice more before I'm able to complete this section and move on to the duel with Adamar. I'm realising the hard way that I can't brute force this challenge, and I'm going to need a lot of patience to pull it off. I take a minute and watch the cutscene while I mentally prepare for my duel. I get off to a good start and decide I need to be offensive in this fight. I remember that parries in story mode leave the opponent in a daze, so I take the opportunity to pop both of my feats, Sharpened Blade and Unblockable, so I can deal as much damage and as quickly as possible. Going full offense works to my benefit since I can't counter my reactions to play defensively, and I know Adamar is the only damage source. I do need to watch my surroundings though, since I somehow managed to hit an invisible wall during the fight. However, I'm not punished and I can win the duel, where I learn that the game grants you an execution even if you finish Adamar off with a light attack. With the first mission cleared, I'm honestly not feeling too optimistic about this challenge. My recollection of the campaign isn't the best, but there are certain fights and sections I think might test my sanity. Regardless, I've learned quite a lot and can hopefully adjust my playstyle now that I'm a little more familiar with the way the game works in this older build. At this point, I've decided that I'll split the video into parts, where I'll likely make 2 episodes per faction, making this a 6-part series. Please let me know if you'd like me to continue. I need to know if my masochism has merit after all.
Blackstone! Where are reinforcements?
I'm it.
Moving on to the second mission, we're against Vikings now, and it's up to us to turn the tide of the battle. I decide to head to what would be point A on Citadel Gate and clear out the area first. I'm trying to remember to be patient given how questionable these older mechanics are, especially the hitboxes. I manage to leave the point though and pick up the Inspire feat, which I try to use and clear the gate. Though it doesn't really work, so it becomes a patient and tedious matter of picking a time to strike. A mistimed zone attack, however, forces me to restart. This time I go straight for the gate, since having used that Inspire feat earlier I'll have to manage without. I also changed my story feats to include bolstering parries, since I'll be relying on them a lot and the extra damage really helps. After a while, we push through and get to our first checkpoint. Believe it or not, that's the hard part out of the way. Now I head to Zone A and proceed to clear out the enemies. Feinting is necessary here since the Berserker likes to dodge attack. Clearing out the area nets me another checkpoint and I proceed across the bridge to the next section. Fortunately, the archers here decide to put away their bows, giving me plenty of time to approach this skirmish. Any shortcuts to victory is welcome, so I hope that Berserker enjoys his fall. It's nice to see Stone helping out. I use the ballista to snipe down the archers on point C and then make my way over there. That plunge was an unnecessary risk since Stone could have hit me. We're not punished though and we can clear out the next area. It was now time to push the enemies back again. This time though we have more allies on our side and more space to work with. Our last task is to defeat a Valkyrie. I get a bit too aggressive though and a light attack snuffs out my attempted guard break. Still, considering how bad the first mission went, this is a significant improvement. I'm much more careful in the rematch and block and parry appropriately. I tried to sneak in a catapult but unfortunately it doesn't work. Stone just seems to stand there enjoying the show, and Valkyrie must have taken note because she decides not to fight either. No matter, we take those. Well, we're 2 missions down, and despite having more enemies to deal with in this one, it went much better than the first. Maybe this challenge won't be so bad after all. Anyhow, mission 3 is going to be me and Stone versus the world, as we've got Vikings and Turncoat Knights to deal with. The first group of enemies goes down without much hassle. I'm careful with spacing and wait for parry opportunities to present themselves so I can get through unscathed. I have to be careful not to get surrounded, but at the same time keep my distance from Stone, since he could too inadvertently damage me. Once the gates are open, we will encounter shielded enemies. You might have seen them before if you ever played Skirmish. We have to avoid hitting their all guard here, since they will counterattack with an unblockable stab akin to that of Warlords. Muscle memory has me trying to hit side heavies in narrow spaces, since that's Warden's typical guard break punish. Slow and steady wins out though, and I take advantage of the spikes to neutralise another threat. Unfortunately, the overly defensive shielded enemies come in a pair this time, and while I opt to take out one with the spikes, the other takes his chance and manages to damage me. As always, the solution is patience and picking better places to fight. These shielded foes will be susceptible to attacks so long as they're properly spaced. While not practical in a real fight and even laughable in the story mode, rolling away becomes my best friend as it helps me to nope out of situations I don't trust myself to be ready for. Careful navigation grants me an audience with our last Viking adversaries of the mission, with a warlord and an archer. Guess which one scares me more? You really can't take the soldiers, archers and captains for granted. These are the enemies that will catch you off guard. I second guess myself for a moment and roll away. I don't want to have to redo that last section again, and I know the warlord will go down easy if I can parry the inevitable light attack. With that section done, it's time for the turncoats. Fortunately, I remember that there is an ambush ahead and I'm ready for the Peacekeeper. I'm concerned that she'll dodge attack if I commit, so I patiently turtle up for the victory. I'm quite content to leave Stone in the thick of it all and bait out targets one by one. If I can take out these knights, I'll be at the final part of the mission. Stone gives me some anxiety though as he decides to swing for my opponent. Fortunately, it's a light attack and I don't take any damage. So I decide to remove the last soldier out of the way, leaving only the captain, but I'm again dumbfounded by Old For Honor as I notice swing for me instead of the Iron Legionnaire. He soon remedies his mistake though, and we can move on to the final fight. So, arguably this fight looks more difficult than it actually is. You are introduced to the revenge mechanic here, presumably to help you with the numbers difference. I'm not entirely certain what happened at the start of this fight, but my guard disappeared after the tutorial window was closed and I immediately failed. Now, while revenge grants a shield, I'm still counting damage done to shields as damage taken, because I don't want to give myself any easy outs in this challenge. So the strategy here is quite simple, but still needs some patience to execute. The plan is to let Stone have his mirror match while I go around the circle eliminating the captains. I'm starting to notice they've got a slightly increased health pool, but they go down without resistance. The enemy Conqueror is the only concern I have, since I know Stone won't take him out, I'm going to have to. So I pop Revenge to get some free damage off and then use my throwdown feat to try and keep him from attacking. Unfortunately, I mess up the Punishers since I don't remember what's optimal in this early build, and I'm autopiloting with multiplayer brain. Thankfully, For Honor had very slow light attacks way back in the early days, meaning the poor conscript seals his own fate. And with that, part 1 of this challenge is done. So, for those who made it to the end, thank you, I very much appreciate it. Please let me know if you'd like to see the rest of the story mode completed with these restrictions. I've always wanted to try and do this video, and I've enjoyed and lamented these 3 missions in this context. There are some tough sections coming up in the story. For those who know the campaign well, you'll probably have some fights in mind that will be interesting to see with such a challenge in play. So stay tuned if that interests you, and also stay tuned for more For Honor and other gaming content coming soon. Thank you all so much for watching the video. You can support the channel by liking the video and subscribing. Tick the bell icon to be notified every time I upload a video, and to make sure you don't miss out on the next part of this challenge. See you in the next one. Thanks again. Ciao for now.